The twin sons of Arendor faded behind the crystal towers as Captain Eli Ward stepped into the royal courtyard. The air shimmered with blue light, and strange flowers glowed like stars at his feet. It was his first time on an alien world, and though he had seen many planets before, nothing compared to the beauty of this place. But beauty did not mean safety. Every eye in the court watched him, cold, curious, and filled with quiet mockery. At the center of the gathering stood Princess Lyra of the Silver Crown, tall and radiant, her skin marked with faint golden lines that shimmered when she moved. She was young, proud, and dangerous in her grace. Her people called humans emotion-driven animals. Eli could feel the tension in every step he took toward her. He bowed slightly, a gesture of Earth diplomacy. "Your Highness," he said, his voice calm and respectful. Lyra tilted her head, her eyes gleaming like pale sapphires. "So this is the human ambassador," she said, her tone smooth but playful. "You come to speak of peace, yet your species is known for war." Eli smiled softly. "We've learned peace the hard way. That makes us value it more." Her lips curved in amusement. The court chuckled behind her. She circled him slowly, her long gown brushing the glowing floor. "You humans are strange," she said. "You fight, you burn, and then you sing songs about love. Such contradictions." Eli shrugged gently. "Maybe that's what makes us human." Lyra stopped in front of him, her expression both curious and mocking. "Tell me," she said suddenly, "is it true humans show affection by pressing their mouths together? What do you call it? A kiss?" Some of the courtiers gasped in laughter. Eli blinked, slightly embarrassed but calm. "Yes," he said. "It's a sign of care, of trust." The princess laughed, her voice echoing across the hall like silver bells. "How ridiculous. So unhygienic. So primitive." She turned to her attendants, smirking. "Imagine showing love by touching faces." The crowd laughed harder, whispering words Eli couldn't understand. But he stood quietly, watching her with patient eyes. "Strange to you," he said softly, "but it has meaning for us. A kiss can say what words cannot." Lyra's laughter slowed. Something in his calm tone made her stop. She looked at him again, this time not as an alien but as something else. Something she couldn't define. "Words cannot?" she repeated. Eli nodded. "Sometimes words are too small for what the heart feels." The court grew quiet. Even the faint hum of glowing insects seemed to stop. For a moment, Lyra's face softened, her golden markings pulsing faintly. Then she shook her head, hiding the flicker of emotion behind a smile. "How poetic," she said. "But your ways are still strange." Eli gave a small bow. "Maybe. But sometimes strangeness is only understanding we haven't reached yet." Her smile faded into a thoughtful silence. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, not with fear, not with pride, but with calm sincerity. It unsettled her. "Tell me, human," she said after a pause, "do you truly believe your gestures hold power? That such simple contact could change hearts?" "I've seen it heal more wounds than weapons ever could," Eli replied. "A kiss is not just touch. It's trust, peace, sometimes forgiveness." Lyra turned away quickly. "Enough," she said. "You speak as if emotions are your weapons." Eli's voice was quiet but steady. "They are." Her hand tightened around the edge of her jeweled robe. She did not like being challenged. Yet deep inside something stirred, a strange curiosity she didn't wish to admit. She waved her hand toward the guards. "Take the human to his quarters. Tomorrow he may speak before the council. Tonight he will rest." As Eli was escorted away, Lyra watched him go. His words lingered in her mind like the aftertaste of sweet fruit. She whispered softly to herself, almost too low for anyone to hear. "A kiss that heals more than weapons." Her advisor, a tall elder with crystal horns, approached her cautiously. "Princess, why give him audience? Humans bring emotion, chaos. You must not be swayed by their softness." Lyra glanced up at the twin moons rising over the palace. "He amuses me," she said with a faint smile. That is all. But when she retired to her private chambers, she found herself standing before her mirror, touching her lips thoughtfully. She tried to imagine what it would mean to trust someone that closely, to let another being's warmth meet your own. Her reflection glimmered back at her with confusion and something dangerously close to longing. "No," she murmured to herself. "We don't kiss. We never will." Outside, the alien wind carried the sound of human footsteps echoing down the marble hallways. Steady, confident, unafraid. For the first time, Princess Lyra felt a flicker of something she had never felt before toward a human. Not fear, not contempt, but curiosity. And curiosity on Arendor was far more dangerous than hate. The next morning, the royal court of Arendor shimmered beneath the glow of floating light orbs. The great hall was filled with nobles wearing crystal robes that shifted color as they moved. The air smelled of silver mist and perfume. At the center, on a raised platform, sat Princess Lyra, her expression calm but her mind restless. She hadn't slept much. All night the human's words echoed in her thoughts. A kiss can say what words cannot. She had told herself it was nonsense. Yet she could not stop thinking about it. When Captain Eli Ward entered the hall escorted by guards, the courtiers fell silent. He was dressed in his simple Earth uniform, nothing like their shining armor, but he carried himself with quiet strength. Lyra watched him approach and felt that same odd feeling again. Not fear, not disgust, but something new and uncomfortable. "Human," she said, her voice firm and regal. "You spoke boldly yesterday. My people laughed, but you did not lose your calm. You said your strange kiss is an act of peace." Eli nodded. "That's right, Your Highness." Lyra leaned forward. "Then prove it." Whispers spread like a wave through the hall. The courtiers exchanged glances, shocked. Eli raised an eyebrow. "Prove it?" "Yes," Lyra said. "You say your gesture carries meaning. Then show us. Convince my court that your way has worth." Eli could tell she was testing him, part mockery, part curiosity. He thought for a moment, then spoke quietly. "If I may, Your Highness, a kiss is not a thing to perform for an audience. It is personal, not a show." The hall erupted in soft laughter. Lyra smiled, triumphant. "How convenient. A gesture that cannot be proven." Eli met her eyes calmly. "Some truths can't be proven by sight, only by heart." For a heartbeat, the hall was silent again. The princess's smile faded just slightly. That calm voice and that simple honesty unsettled her again. "Fine," she said finally, regaining her composure. "Then we will test your heart instead." She stood and motioned for him to follow. The two walked out of the hall and into the garden of crystalline blossoms, a sacred place where glowing trees bent over pools of mirrored water. Lyra stopped beside one of the pools, her reflection shimmering like gold dust. "Tell me, human," she said, "why do your people give such importance to affection? It weakens reason. It blinds judgment." Eli looked around at the beauty of the place. "Because emotion reminds us we're alive," he said softly. "Without it, peace is just silence. Life needs connection." Lyra tilted her head. "Connection? Between two bodies?" "Between two souls," he corrected. She laughed again, but softer this time. "You speak like poets. We are a race of logic. We solve with thought, not touch." Eli smiled faintly. "And yet you still celebrate beauty, art, and song. Logic alone didn't create those." Her golden markings glowed brighter for a second, a sign of inner emotion. "You speak too boldly, human. You think your ways can teach us. I don't wish to teach," Eli said, his tone respectful. "Only to share." They stood in silence for a while, watching the ripples on the pool. The distant hum of alien birds filled the air. Then Lyra's voice broke the stillness. "Do humans ever fear affection?" Eli's eyes softened. "Every day. Because when we care, we can be hurt. But we still choose it. That's what makes it real." Lyra looked at him carefully. His words struck something deep inside her. Something she had never admitted even to herself. She turned away quickly. "You are a strange man, Captain Ward. And you," Eli said gently, "are not as cold as you pretend." Lyra froze. No one had ever spoken to her that way. For a moment she wanted to scold him, to remind him who she was. But instead she laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You humans are dangerous. Not with your weapons, but with your words." Eli bowed lightly. "Then I'm honored to be armed with honesty." Before she could answer, her advisor appeared at the edge of the garden. "Your Highness, the Council of Moons requests your presence." "The human will attend tomorrow's festival." Lyra nodded, still looking at Eli. "Very well. Let the human see what true culture looks like." As he was led away, Eli glanced back once. The princess was still standing by the water, touching her lips as if thinking of something impossible. That night, Lyra sat by her window staring at the stars. Her father's words echoed in her memory. "Humans infect with emotion. Stay distant, daughter," but she couldn't, not anymore. The human's calm voice had broken through her pride. she whispered to the empty room almost angrily. He thinks emotion is strength. Foolish creature. Yet her heart betrayed her words, and it beat faster than it ever had before. And far below the palace, in his guest chamber, Eli smiled faintly, as if he somehow knew the battle inside her had just begun. The first spark of understanding had been lit, and it would soon turn into something far more powerful than either of them expected. The night of the Festival of Moons came with colors the human eye had never seen before. 2 great moons hung over the sky of Arendor, one silver, one violet, casting twin shadows over the palace. The entire city glowed beneath crystal lights that floated in the air like drifting lanterns. Music echoed through the wide courtyards, soft at first, then rising like a heartbeat. Captain Eli Ward stood among the crowd, wearing the dark uniform of Earth's envoy, the edges lined with faint blue light. He had been invited as an observer, though everyone knew he was more like an exhibit. Alien nobles passed him, whispering and staring. To them, he was the strange creature from the war-torn world, the one who spoke of feelings instead of conquest. Still, he walked calmly, hands clasped behind his back, eyes watching everything, the glowing dancers, the fruit that shone like molten amber, the laughter that rippled through the alien air. But one presence caught his attention more than all else: Princess Lyra. She entered the courtyard dressed in shimmering armor that looked alive, liquid silver flowing over her skin. The golden marks on her face glowed brighter under the moons. She carried herself with pride, but her eyes were not mocking tonight. They were searching. When their gazes met across the glowing crowd, the music seemed to fade. For a moment neither moved. Then Lyra approached, her steps graceful and firm. The onlookers watched in silence. No princess of Arendor had ever walked so directly toward an outsider. "Captain Ward," she greeted, her tone formal yet softer than before. "Your Highness," he said with a small bow. "You honor me by speaking again." "I told the council I wanted to see the human custom of honesty," she said, eyes narrowing. "At our festival, each guest must share a truth of the heart." Eli smiled faintly. "A dangerous tradition." Lyra's lips curved. "Perhaps, but necessary. We reveal truth to purify the soul." They stood side by side as the ceremony began. One by one, nobles stepped forward before the moonlit altar to share their truths, some proud, some ashamed, some filled with longing. When Lyra's turn came, she walked ahead, her silver gown catching the light like water. "My truth," she said to the gathered crowd, "is that I do not understand humans. They speak of peace yet carry violence in their blood. They show care through contact." The court chuckled lightly, but she continued, "And yet I cannot stop wondering if what they call love is weakness, or something else entirely." Her eyes flicked toward Eli at the edge of the platform. "Perhaps," she said quietly. "I laugh because I do not understand what I fear." Murmurs spread through the court. Lyra turned quickly, pretending her heart wasn't racing. She stepped back into the line of guests. Then it was Eli's turn. He walked forward under the twin moons, their light washing over his human face. "My truth," he said slowly, "is that I've seen many worlds destroyed because people forgot how to feel. They traded love for logic, mercy for strength. But feelings are not weakness, they're proof that we still care enough to protect something." He turned his head slightly, his gaze finding Lyra's again. "A kiss," he said quietly, "is just one way we remind ourselves that connection matters more than fear." Silence spread through the courtyard. Even the floating lights seemed to pause. Lyra's golden markings pulsed faintly, betraying the emotion she tried to hide. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "You speak as though your heart is a weapon," she said softly. "It is," Eli replied, "but it's one I choose to use for peace." The music rose again, a low rhythm of alien drums and soft crystal chimes. The festival continued, but the crowd's laughter felt distant now. Something had changed in the air, something delicate, unspoken. Later that night, when the moonlight dimmed and the guests began to leave, Lyra found herself walking toward the human again. She pretended it was by chance, but her heartbeat said otherwise. "You speak too simply," she said, stopping beside him. "Yet your words stay in my mind like a song." "Then perhaps you're starting to understand the melody," he said, smiling. Lyra frowned slightly, though her eyes softened. "You're an unusual man, Captain Ward. You twist thoughts with kindness." "I only mean what I say." She looked up at the violet moon, her voice low. "If you are right, If affection truly holds such power, then one day you must prove it. Eli met her gaze steadily. If that day comes, princess, I will. They stood beneath the twin moons, alien royalty and human soldier, two souls divided by species yet drawn by something far stronger. Neither realized it yet, but the first thread of connection had already been woven between them, and while the festival drums echoed in the distance, both knew this was no longer just diplomacy. It was something deeper, something that would soon test the line between peace and forbidden desire. The moons had sunk low in the Arendorian sky when Princess Lyra returned to her chamber. The laughter of the festival still echoed faintly from the distant courtyards, but inside the palace, silence ruled. She stood before the window, the silver curtains moving with the soft alien wind. Her mind was full of strange noise, not of sound but of thoughts. The human's words would not leave her. A kiss's connection, a bridge between souls. She had dismissed it before, but now it haunted her. What kind of connection could make someone risk their pride, even their life? Why did his voice, so calm and gentle, carry more power than a weapon? Finally, unable to rest, she left her room and walked down the silent halls. Her golden armor shimmered softly with each step. The guards bowed as she passed, thinking she was merely wandering after the festival. But she had a purpose. She stopped outside the guest quarters, where Captain Eli Ward was staying. For a long moment she hesitated. It was madness. No princess of Arendor would visit a human alone at night, yet curiosity burned hotter than reason. She knocked once, the door opened slowly. Eli stood there, half awake, half surprised. His jacket was off, his expression soft in the dim light. "Your Highness," he said, startled. "Is something wrong?" Lyra stepped inside without answering. "I came to ask you something," she said, her tone low and controlled. He nodded. "Of course." She turned toward him, eyes steady but her voice trembling just slightly. "You said that your people use a kiss to show emotion. I wish to understand it. For cultural learning." Eli's brow furrowed. "Lyra, that's not something meant for research," she interrupted quickly, though her cheeks glowed faintly gold. "Purely educational." Eli smiled faintly, trying not to laugh. "And what would your council think of such education?" "They will not know," she said firmly. "You said knowledge requires understanding. Then show me." For a long moment neither spoke. Only the hum of the crystal lights filled the room. Eli could see the determination in her eyes. The same fire she used to command her people now turned toward him. He took a slow breath. "Very well, but you should understand, it's not about showing power." "Then what is it about?" she asked softly. "It's about trust." He stepped closer. She did not move away. The air between them seemed alive, electric, quiet, trembling with something unseen. Lyra felt her heartbeat echo in her fingertips. Eli raised a hand slowly, touching her cheek. Her skin was cool and smooth, like glass warmed by sunlight. She stiffened, unused to touch, but didn't pull back. "This is how it begins," he whispered. Her golden markings brightened under his touch, glowing faintly. "Strange," she said quietly. "It feels like—" Before she could finish, the door burst open. 4 palace guards stormed inside, their weapons glowing blue. The moment shattered like glass. "Your Highness," one shouted. "Step away from the human!" Lyra froze, eyes wide. Eli quickly stepped back, raising his hands. The guards surrounded him. "What are you doing?" Lyra demanded, her voice sharp. "The council ordered constant protection," the captain of the guard said. "You were alone with him, a dangerous outsider." Eli looked calm, though his heart pounded. "I meant no disrespect," he said. "She came here by choice." "Silence," the guard snapped. He seized Eli by the arm. "Release him," Lyra ordered. But the guards hesitated only a second before obeying the council's standing law. "The human is to be confined until further notice," they said firmly. Lyra's fury burned bright, but she knew resistance would only make it worse. Her father's words came back to her. "Do not let them infect you with emotion." As the guards dragged Eli away, he turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. His voice was quiet but clear. "Curiosity isn't a crime, Your Highness." The words hit her like an arrow. She said nothing, couldn't say anything, as the door closed between them. When the guards left, she stood alone in the silence. Her hands trembled slightly, her breath uneven. For the first time, she realized how fragile her world truly was. She looked at her reflection in the crystal wall. Golden eyes, flawless face glowing marking, and whispered bitterly, "We don't kiss," but her voice cracked on the words. Because deep inside she finally understood what that gesture meant. It wasn't about pleasure. It wasn't even about love. It was about courage. The courage to let another soul come close enough to see who you truly are. And that, she thought, was something her proud world had long forgotten. The great council chamber of Arendor was carved from glowing stone and filled with cold light. The walls shimmered with energy veins, and each noble's reflection floated faintly in the air like ghosts. It was a place built to remind everyone of order, logic above emotion, obedience above desire. Captain Eli Ward stood in the center, surrounded by guards. His wrists bound with a thin silver restraint that pulsed faintly. He looked calm, even though dozens of alien eyes stared down at him from high crystal seats. Above them all sat King Thalor, father of Princess Lyra, his expression sharp as a blade. "You are accused," the king said, his voice echoing through the hall, "of violating sacred space and attempting intimate contact with royal blood." Eli raised his head. "With respect, Your Majesty, I did no such thing." The princess came to speak. "I simply listened." A murmur swept through the chamber. The council did not care for truth. They cared for control. One elder leaned forward, eyes glowing pale. "Humans are known for corruption through emotion. It spreads like fire. If we allow it, our society will fall to chaos." Eli stayed silent for a moment, then said calmly, "Maybe emotion isn't corruption. Maybe it's courage," the crowd hissed softly, insulted. But from the upper balcony hidden behind silver curtains, Lyra watched everything. Her heart pounded painfully as she saw him stand alone before her people, facing their hatred with steady eyes. The king continued coldly, "You speak of courage, human, but you have broken our law. You will be escorted to the outer camps. From there you will be sent back to your planet at sunrise." Eli nodded once. "If that's your will, I'll go. But I'll tell you this, peace won't come from fear. You can lock away feeling, but not forever. It always finds a way back." The hall went silent again. His words, simple and honest, hung in the air like something dangerous. The guards pulled him away, but he didn't resist. His calmness unsettled them. Lyra stepped back into the shadows, her chest tight. Her mind screamed for her to act, but her voice wouldn't rise. Her father's warning rang in her ears. Emotion weakens rulers. Compassion kills order. That night the palace felt colder than ever. The moonlight through her window looked pale and lifeless. She paced the floor, her armor glimmering with faint light. The words Eli had spoken during the trial kept replaying. "You can lock away feeling, but not forever." Finally, she couldn't bear it any longer. She called her closest attendant, a young guard named Rin. "Where is the human?" she asked. "In the outer cells, Princess. The guards plan to escort him to the transport ship at dawn." Lyra turned toward the window. "Has he resisted?" "No, Your Highness." "He said he understands." She nodded slowly. That answer hurt more than she expected. "He understands." That meant he would leave quietly. He would let them win. Rin hesitated. "Forgive me, Princess. But if you speak for him, perhaps—" Lyra cut her off. "If I speak for him, I lose the council's trust. My father's throne weakens. The alliance ends." The guard looked down. "Then he will die with honor." Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "Honor doesn't warm the soul." She dismissed Rin and stood alone again. Her hands trembled slightly. For the first time in her life, she hated her world's perfection. The cold beauty, the polished logic, the way feelings were treated like infection. Somewhere deep inside, she knew Eli was right. Emotion wasn't weakness. It was the one thing that made people alive. As the night deepened, she wrapped herself in a dark cloak and left her chamber. The corridors were silent. The guards at the far end didn't notice her pass. Her armor now dimmed its glow to hide her. She moved like a shadow through the palace until she reached the outer cells. There, behind a transparent energy barrier, sat the human, calm as ever. He looked up when she appeared. "Princess," he said quietly, "I didn't expect a farewell." Her throat tightened. "You shouldn't have spoken that way in the council." "I spoke truth," he replied, "even if they can't hear it yet." Lyra stepped closer to the barrier. "You don't understand. You've made them afraid. They'll never forgive this." Eli smiled faintly. "Fear fades. Understanding lasts longer." Something inside her broke. She placed her hand on the barrier, the golden glow from her markings flaring softly. "You've ruined my peace, human." He met her eyes. Maybe that piece wasn't living at all. Silence. Only the hum of the barrier between them. Then, without another word, Lyra turned and pressed a small crystal key into the lock. The field flickered and vanished. Eli stood surprised. "What are you doing?" "Choosing," she said simply. "For once in my life, I'm choosing." And as alarms began to echo faintly down the corridor, she whispered, "We'll both pay for it. But I'd rather live once with truth than forever in silence." She stepped back as he walked through the open cell door. Free at last, but bound now by something far more powerful than chains. The alarms screamed through the crystal corridors like angry ghosts. Guards shouted orders. Lights flashed red across the palace walls, and the once calm air turned heavy with panic. But through that chaos, two figures ran: the alien princess and the human she had freed. Princess Lyra led the way, her silver cloak billowing behind her as she darted through side passages only royal blood could access. The bioluminescent walls glowed faintly under her touch, guiding their path. Behind her, Captain Eli Ward moved quickly, his boots echoing against polished stone. "Where are we going?" he asked, breath low but steady. "Out of the city," she said without turning. "There's an old transport tunnel beneath the gardens." "No scanners there," Eli frowned. "And after that? What happens when your people realize what you've done?" Lyra hesitated for half a second. "They already know. But if I stop now, everything I said, everything I believed will mean nothing." They reached a wide corridor filled with shimmering vines that pulsed like living light. Lyra pressed her palm against the wall, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow stairway leading downward. The air there was colder, the scent of damp stone and old energy. They descended in silence, the sound of the alarms fading above. At the bottom, the tunnel stretched ahead into darkness. Dim lights flickered along the walls, remnants of an older age. Lyra finally stopped, turning to face him. Her face glowed softly in the tunnel light. Fierce, tired, beautiful. "You shouldn't have come back for me," Eli said quietly. Lyra shook her head. "You don't understand. My people, my father, taught me that emotion is weakness. But when I watched you stand against the council, when you faced judgment without fear," her voice wavered, "I realized the weakness isn't emotion. It's fear of it." Eli's expression softened. "You risked everything for something your world forbids." She stepped closer, her golden markings faintly pulsing. "You made me see truth. For generations, my people ruled with silence. But silence kills slowly." For a long moment, they stood face to face in the dark tunnel, their breaths misting in the cold air. Then the faint sound of pursuit echoed from above, the pounding of armored boots. "The shouts of guards, they're coming," Eli said. Lyra turned, eyes blazing. "Then we move." They ran through the tunnel, the echo of their steps blending with the distant roar of water. Ahead, faint moonlight shone through cracks in the ceiling, the exit to the surface. When they emerged outside, they were in the Garden of Moons, where glowing trees bent under twin lights. The same place where days ago they had spoken of feelings and logic. Now it was their battlefield. A group of soldiers surrounded them almost immediately. The captain of the guard raised his staff. "Princess Lyra, by royal command, stand down. You are charged with treason." Lyra lifted her chin proudly. "Then let me commit it fully." She stepped in front of Eli, her cloak falling from her shoulders. The guards hesitated. No one dared strike the heir to the throne. "Lyra," Eli whispered, "don't do this for me." She turned to him, her eyes glowing brighter than the moon's. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because of you." And before he could speak, she took his face in her hands, cool fingers trembling, and kissed him. It was gentle at first, unsure, like a spark catching dry air. Then it deepened into something fierce and alive. Around them the guards froze, stunned. The glow from her golden markings spread across her skin like firelight, brighter, purer, unstoppable. When she finally pulled away, her voice was steady. "There," she said softly, "that is what we call strength." The captain of the guard fell to one knee, speechless. Others hesitated, unsure whether to obey or watch. Eli looked at her, his voice rough. "You just changed everything." Lyra smiled faintly. "Maybe not everything, but something has to begin somewhere." From the palace balcony high above, King Thaler had seen it all. His daughter's defiance, the forbidden act that would echo through history. He did not call for her arrest. Instead, his hand trembled slightly as he whispered to himself, "So, this is the power of what we feared." Below, Lyra stood tall in the moonlight. The soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. The air was still, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Eli reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. For the first time, the princess who once mocked humans stood beside one, not as royalty and visitor, but as equals. In that fragile silence, something ancient broke within Arendor's heart. A rule older than its throne, an order built on emotionless logic, all cracked under the quiet rebellion of one human's courage and one princess's choice. Above them, the twin moons crossed paths, their lights merging into one. And in that rare moment, the universe seemed to whisper, a single act of love can change an empire. The morning after the kiss was unlike any dawn Arendor had ever seen. The palace that once shone with cold, ordered light now burned with whispers. Every corridor, every courtyard carried the same question. Had the princess really kissed the human? The answer was yes, and the entire empire trembled because of it. From the grand spires of the capital to the floating academies above the clouds, the story spread faster than any royal decree. The act was forbidden, yet no one could look away. For the first time in generations, the people spoke not of laws or logic, but of feeling. Princess Lyra stood in the royal hall once again, but not as a silent observer. Today her father, King Thaler, had summoned her, not with anger, but with something deeper, heavier. The court was silent as she walked across the floor, her silver cloak flowing like liquid light. The king's eyes were tired. "You have broken every rule of our ancestors," he said slowly. "You shamed your bloodline and turned your people's eyes toward chaos." Lyra bowed her head, but her voice was clear. "If love is chaos, father, then perhaps we needed it." Gasps rippled through the council. Never before had an heir spoken such words in that chamber. But Lyra stood tall, the golden glow along her skin calm and steady. Eli stood nearby, unarmed, unguarded. The king's gaze shifted to him. "And you, human, you did this. You infected her with your earth sickness." Eli met his eyes, steady and without fear. "If caring is sickness," he said quietly, "then may it spread." A murmur of disbelief swept through the nobles. No one had ever spoken to the king like that, yet even he did not rage. He simply sat back on his throne, studying the human before him. "You risked war," the king said. Eli nodded. "Maybe. But if a single act of trust can start peace, isn't that worth more than 1,000 battles?" The king's hand tightened on the arm of his throne. For a long time, no one spoke. The hall felt like it was holding its breath. Then slowly the king looked toward his daughter. "When your mother died," he said, his voice softer now, "I erased her songs from the archives. I said music weakened the heart. But last night, I heard the people singing again. They were singing your name." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "I should punish you," Thaler continued, "but I find I no longer have the strength to silence something that feels so alive." The court broke into whispers, some in anger, some in awe. The king raised his hand for silence. "From this day," he declared, "the act of the kiss, once forbidden, will no longer be seen as weakness. Let it remind us that strength can live in gentleness." Lyra felt her heart ache, relief and disbelief mixing into tears she refused to show. She bowed deeply. "Thank you, father." Eli lowered his head in quiet respect. The king's gaze lingered on him. "Human, I still do not understand you. But I see now that your kind's madness carries truth." The council dissolved in slow silence, uncertain whether they had witnessed peace or rebellion. But beyond the hall, outside the walls, Arendor had already changed. Weeks passed. The story of the princess and the human spread across worlds, retold in songs, plays, and stories shared through glowing data streams. Across galaxies, people whispered it as legend, the laughing princess who learned to feel. On the night of the next twin moon alignment, Lyra and Eli stood once again in the Garden of Moons where it had all begun. The glowing petals drifted softly through the air. Lyra smiled faintly. "Do you realize," she said, "that one simple gesture changed my entire world?" Eli smiled back. "I think your world was ready for it. It just needed someone brave enough to start." Lyra stepped closer. "Brave or foolish?" "Sometimes," he said. "They're the same thing." She laughed quietly, that same laugh he had first heard, though softer now, filled with warmth instead of pride. "We don't kiss," she teased, eyes shining. Eli tilted his head slightly. "You keep saying that, Princess." Lyra's smile deepened as she leaned forward, her golden markings glowing under the moonlight. "Then maybe it's time we stop saying it." Their lips met again, not as rebellion, not as defiance, but as a promise. Around them the air shimmered with new energy. The vines glowed brighter. The moonlight deepened, and across Arendor, the people who once mocked emotion felt something stir inside them. From that night on, every peace treaty signed between humans and Arendorians bore a new symbol beside it. 2 interlocking marks. One of light, one of warmth. The seal of unity, born from one human gesture. The princess who had once laughed at humanity became the first ruler to teach her people how to feel again. And as the universe spun silently beyond them, the legend spread, one of the alien who learned to kiss, and the human who taught her what it truly meant to be alive.